It was the kind of morning that promised nothing but the usual routine. The sun had just begun to rise over the sleepy suburban neighborhood of Highland Pines, casting a soft golden hue over the neatly trimmed lawns and rows of cookie-cutter houses. Alex Carter, a federal agent known for his precision and unyielding focus, stepped out of his front door and inhaled the fresh air, savoring the rare moment of peace. The last few weeks had been brutal, filled with long days in dark alleyways and undercovers so deep he barely remembered what daylight looked like. All he wanted now was a quiet cup of coffee, a hot shower, and to forget about his high-risk life for just a few hours. The neighborhood, with its perfectly symmetrical homes and strict HOA regulations, was everything Alex had needed after his harrowing work. A retreat, a sanctuary, or so he thought. As he made his way to the mailbox, he noticed the letter first. It was tucked between a few regular bills, its bright yellow envelope impossible to miss. The HOA's logo sat boldly at the top, a reminder of the organization that had been breathing down his neck for small infractions over the years. They were always quick to send notices for the smallest things: unapproved flower beds, a mailbox a half-inch too high. But Alex had learned to ignore them. Rules were rules, but this was his home, and he had more important things to worry about. Still, there was something in the way the letter felt different. The weight was off, the paper thicker than usual, almost as if they were putting a little extra effort into whatever complaint they had this time. His curiosity piqued. Alex slipped the envelope open with a practiced motion, pulling out the neatly typed letter inside. As he read, a chill ran down his spine. The HOA wasn't just complaining about minor code violations this time. No, this was something bigger. They were notifying him of a final decision. His house had been deemed a hazard to the neighborhood, and without prior warning, they had approved the demolition of his property. The words blurred for a moment, his mind struggling to process the sudden shock. He had seen homes torn down for code violations before, but it was always with notice, always with a chance to correct things. This was different. No prior warning, no appeal process, no room for negotiation. Just a sentence. Before he could gather his thoughts, his phone buzzed in his pocket, and Alex's heart skipped a beat. It was a text from his neighbor, Jennifer, followed by a flurry of frantic voice messages. "Alex, I don't know what's going on, but you need to get over here now. They're bulldozing your house." His stomach twisted. It wasn't possible. Not without his permission. Not without him being there. This had to be a mistake. Or worse, someone was trying to get to him. Trying to undermine everything he stood for. Alex's instincts, finely tuned from years of chasing down criminals, kicked in. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just about property lines or a few too many weeds in his yard. The HOA wasn't just knocking down his house. They were making a statement, and it felt like it was directed right at him. His hand gripped the phone tight as his heart began to race. He didn't even think twice as he raced to his car, the engine roaring to life beneath him. Every mile between him and his home felt like an eternity. The air outside felt thick, oppressive, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. But the question echoed in his mind as he sped through the quiet streets. Why? The HOA had always been a nuisance, sure. But this was something else entirely. There was more at play here. And Alex knew it. Whoever was behind this wasn't just out to destroy his home. They were out to destroy something much more valuable. His peace of mind. Alex's tires screeched as he pulled up to his house, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. He didn't even bother to turn off the engine as he leaped out of the car, his gaze immediately locking on the scene unfolding before him. The bulldozer, a massive metal beast, was halfway through what had once been his front door. Dirt and debris flew into the air as the machine's jaws chewed through the structure, sending wooden beams and shattered glass tumbling to the ground. The sight of it, the utter destruction, sent a cold, numbing wave of disbelief over him. His house, The one place in the world where he could escape the chaos of his job was being reduced to rubble right before his eyes. No warning, no explanation. Just the brutal, relentless force of the bulldozer tearing into everything he had worked for. "Stop!" Alex shouted, his voice hoarse, a surge of adrenaline pushing him forward. He sprinted across the yard, his boots pounding against the gravel, and waved his arms frantically. "Stop the damn machine!" The driver didn't acknowledge him. His face remained expressionless behind the window, and the engine roared as the bulldozer continued its path of destruction. Panic began to claw at Alex's mind. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. He had been in high-stakes situations before, had dealt with criminals who would stop at nothing. But this was something new, something personal. As he reached the base of the bulldozer, he slammed his fist against the metal side, but the driver still didn't flinch. Alex's jaw clenched. He had to get answers. Now. Without a second thought, he fumbled for his wallet, pulled out his federal badge, and flashed it at the man behind the wheel. "I'm a federal agent. Stop the machine, or I will have you arrested for destruction of federal property." The driver's eyes flicked to the badge, his expression changing for the briefest moment. Surprise, then fear. He pulled the lever back, and the machine slowly came to a halt. The hum of the engine sputtered into silence, but the damage had already been done. Alex's heart sank as he watched the wreckage that was once his home. He could barely recognize the place anymore. The front door was gone, windows shattered, and the roof sagged where beams had already been ripped away. The driver finally stepped down from the bulldozer, his face pale. "I was just following orders," he stammered. "The HOA told me." "Who the hell told you to do this?" Alex cut him off, his voice dangerously low, almost a growl. His instincts screamed that this wasn't just an administrative oversight. Someone had planned this, and they were hoping Alex wouldn't notice until it was too late. "I don't know, sir," the driver muttered. "I just got the papers, and they told me the house was to be demolished." No one said anything about who owned it, just that it was an approved demolition. His voice trailed off as he looked nervously at the wreckage of Alex's home. Alex's blood ran cold. Someone had engineered this. Someone who knew exactly how to take down his life without a trace, without him ever knowing what was coming. The voice of his neighbor, Jennifer, broke through his thoughts. She stood at the edge of the yard, her face pale, shaking. "Alex, you've got to see this." She held up a piece of paper, a letter folded and creased, with the same yellow HOA logo at the top. "It was delivered this morning. I thought it was just another warning. But this one's different." Alex moved toward her, his mind racing. Whatever was going on here, it was bigger than some HOA dispute. They hadn't just bulldozed his house. They'd taken everything from him. And they weren't going to get away with it. As he took the letter from Jennifer's trembling hand, his gaze fixed on the words that seemed to mock him. "Final notice. Demolition of property at address. Effective immediately due to unresolved code violations. No further action required." His throat tightened. The HOA didn't just make a mistake. They had intentionally wiped him off the map. But why? The letter didn't make sense. Alex had always been meticulous about his property. He'd never ignored a violation. So why now? Why his house? The answers were out there, and he would find them. But as he scanned the neighborhood, his stomach churned. He wasn't the only one who had been affected by this. Something much more sinister was lurking beneath the surface. Alex's hands trembled as he clutched the letter, his mind a whirlwind of questions and suspicions. This wasn't just a case of bureaucracy gone wrong. There was something far darker at play. He could feel it deep in his gut. But who was behind it? And why his house? He needed answers, and fast. Jennifer's voice broke through his thoughts, shaky but urgent. "Alex, I saw something yesterday. I didn't know if it was important, but now I think it might be." "What did you see?" Alex snapped, his focus sharpening. He could feel time slipping through his fingers. Every second spent questioning was another second that the person behind this could use to cover their tracks. Jennifer hesitated, then spoke in a near whisper. "I was out front when the delivery truck arrived. No notice, just a truck full of documents. The driver, he wasn't from around here. He looked nervous, like he didn't want anyone to see him. And when he handed over the stack of papers to the HOA's president, I saw the name on the top sheet." She paused for effect. It was the name of a company, a developer, one that's been buying up property in the area. Alex's blood ran cold. A developer. He had heard whispers about new luxury housing projects coming to Highland Pines, but those were just rumors. What Jennifer had witnessed was more than that. The HOA had been complicit in something far more insidious, a coordinated effort to drive homeowners out and sell the land for profit. And Alex was caught in the middle. The puzzle pieces were starting to fall into place. But there was something else gnawing at him. If the HOA had been taken over by developers, why demolish his house first? Was it random? Or was there something about him, something he didn't yet understand, that made him a target? "Do you have any idea who the developer is?" Alex asked, his voice low, controlled. I don't know the name, but I remember the logo." Jennifer pulled out her phone, swiping quickly through images until she found what she was looking for. The logo was sleek, a sharp silver C surrounded by clean lines. I saw it on the papers the driver carried." Alex took a deep breath as the image sank in. Caldwell Enterprises. The name sent a jolt through him. He'd heard it before, whispers of its influence creeping through the local government and business circles. They were one of the biggest real estate development firms in the region, known for bulldozing small, tight-knit communities and replacing them with high-end condos and shops. But what did they want with him? Before Alex could ask more questions, his phone buzzed in his pocket. His heart skipped a beat as he pulled it out, reading the text. "I know what you're trying to do. Don't get involved, Carter. Walk away. You don't want to see what happens next." The message was anonymous, but Alex didn't need to see the number to recognize the threat. Someone who knew exactly what he was up against, was watching his every move. And they weren't just warning him to back off. They were threatening him. He could almost hear the cold, menacing undertone of the words. Whoever had sent this message wasn't bluffing. Alex's jaw clenched as he looked at Jennifer. "We need to get to the bottom of this. Now, whoever is behind this, they're making sure I can't do anything about it. They want me scared. They want me to back down." But Alex wasn't about to let them win. This wasn't just about a house. This was about control. Caldwell Enterprises and the corrupted HOA had crossed a line, and Alex wasn't the type to let it slide. He had seen evil up close in his line of work, but this was something different. It was personal. "We're going to take this to the next level," Alex said, his voice cold and determined. "But we need to be careful. Someone wants me out of the way, and they'll do whatever it takes to make that happen." Jennifer swallowed hard, nodding. "What do we do first?" Alex looked out at the rubble of his home, a fire igniting in his chest. "We go to the heart of the beast. We find out who's pulling the strings, and we make them regret underestimating us." As he turned to leave, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every step he took felt like a countdown, each tick of the clock bringing him closer to something much darker than he had anticipated. Whoever was behind this, they weren't going to let him walk away. And the real game was only just beginning. The investigation was far more complicated than Alex had anticipated. The moment he tried to get any concrete information about the HOA's decision, he hit a brick wall. No one would speak to him. Lawyers, city officials, and even his own colleagues seemed oddly tight-lipped. The cold shoulder was unmistakable, and as he dug deeper, the air grew thicker, heavier with the sense that something far more sinister was unfolding beneath the surface. Alex sat across from Rachel, his former partner in the agency, the only person he trusted completely. She was the best investigator he knew, methodical, sharp and unafraid to go places others would hesitate to. Together, they had uncovered cases far more complex than this. But this felt different. They weren't just up against a corrupt system anymore. Someone was trying to bury the truth. Rachel scanned through the documents Alex had managed to gather from the wreckage of his house, her brow furrowed. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, tapping her pen against the papers. "These documents aren't just about violations. These are falsified. Someone planted them. And they're so well done, it's almost like they've been custom-tailored to make sure this house is marked for demolition." Alex's hands were clenched into fists. "But why me? Why target my house specifically? I've got no connection to these developers. I haven't even met anyone from Caldwell Enterprises." Rachel paused, her eyes narrowing as she flipped through another document. "That's what doesn't add up. The HOA's official reports claim your house was condemned for safety hazards, but there's no legitimate reason for it. These records are fabricated. And there's more. Look at this." She slid a folder across the table to him. Inside was a report from a local construction company, with a detailed map of the neighborhood and a list of properties to be bulldozed. Alex's eyes immediately darted to his own address, but what chilled him wasn't just the fact that his home was marked. It was the date. The demolition was scheduled for 2 weeks ago, Alex whispered. His heart skipped a beat. "But I only got the letter today. What's going on?" Rachel leaned forward, her voice low and intense. "Someone's covering their tracks, Alex. They've erased every trace of their actions, but we got a problem. Whoever's behind this is working fast, and they're using their connections to make sure the authorities stay out of it." Alex rubbed his temples, the pressure mounting. The more they uncovered, the more it became clear that the people behind this were well-connected, powerful, and willing to do whatever it took to keep their plans on track. The authorities were either compromised or simply unwilling to get involved. His phone buzzed suddenly, the sharp sound cutting through the tense silence. He glanced at the screen, his pulse quickening when he saw the message. "I've got what you're looking for. Meet me tonight. No cops. Don't bring anyone." Alex's gaze snapped to Rachel, who raised an eyebrow. "It's them, isn't it? The whistleblower." He nodded. "It's the only lead we've got, but they want to meet in person, and they're not messing around. We're walking into the lion's den, Rachel. No backup, no safety net. This is the only shot we've got." Rachel didn't hesitate. "Then we take it, but you better believe I'm coming with you." Alex could feel the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. The danger was real now. Whoever had been pulling the strings had their sights set on him, and he was no longer just dealing with a rogue developer or corrupt HOA officials. This was bigger. Someone was working behind the scenes, manipulating the system to destroy not only his home but the entire neighborhood. But who? And why? As nightfall approached, the city felt more oppressive than ever. Shadows stretched across the streets like the long fingers of some unseen predator. Alex's grip tightened on the wheel as he and Rachel drove through the darkened roads, heading toward the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, the location the whistleblower had provided. The city's usual hum of activity felt muted, as if it, too, was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. And Alex couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was being watched. His every move was being tracked. The pieces were beginning to fit, but the puzzle was only getting more complex. What kind of power could erase a man's life so thoroughly? And what was Caldwell Enterprises willing to do to keep their secrets hidden? They were about to find out. The warehouse loomed in the distance, its silhouette dark and foreboding against the backdrop of a clouded night sky. Alex's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the cracked pavement ahead, but even the artificial light seemed to retreat from the decaying structure. It looked abandoned, but Alex had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving. Every inch of this place screamed danger. He and Rachel pulled into the lot, parking a few spaces away from the entrance. The air felt colder now, the silence thicker. As they stepped out of the car, Alex scanned the surroundings. Nothing moved. No cars, no shadows. Just the unsettling stillness that seemed to hang in the air like a storm waiting to break. Rachel gave him a pointed look, her hand resting on the concealed holster at her side. "You sure this is a good idea?" Her voice was steady, but there was a quiet edge of concern in her tone. "We don't have a choice," Alex replied, his jaw tight. "This is the only lead we have left. Whoever's behind this is playing a dangerous game, and they won't stop until we're gone. We need to find out who's pulling the strings. And fast." They moved toward the entrance, the crunch of their boots on the gravel the only sound in the oppressive silence. As they reached the door, Alex's pulse quickened. The door creaked open, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the lion's den. Inside, the warehouse was dark. The air smelled of old wood and rusted metal, a sickly sweet stench that made Alex's stomach churn. A single light bulb flickered above them, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch across the floor like they were alive. And then, out of the shadows, a voice spoke, low, raspy, almost as if it had been waiting for them. "I told you not to bring anyone." Alex's hand instinctively reached for his gun, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had been in enough dangerous situations to know that panicking was the quickest way to lose control. He glanced around, but all he saw were shelves filled with discarded equipment and old crates. There was no one in sight. "Who are you?" Alex called into the darkness, his voice firm, demanding. "What do you want?" A figure stepped into the light, tall and gaunt, wearing a weathered jacket and a baseball cap that shadowed their face. The figure's voice was distorted, muffled, like they were trying to hide their identity. "You're in way over your head, Agent Carter. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Alex's blood ran cold. The voice was familiar, too familiar, but he couldn't place it. "You're working with Caldwell Enterprises," Alex said, stepping forward. "You're the one pulling the strings. You're the one who bulldozed my house." The figure didn't respond immediately. Instead, they'd reached into their pocket and pulled out a small folder, tossing it onto the ground between them. "I'm not the one you should be worried about," the figure muttered. "Caldwell Enterprises is just the beginning. You've stumbled onto something far bigger. They're not the only ones in this game." Rachel leaned in, her voice sharp. "What do you mean? Who else is involved?" The figure finally raised their head, revealing just enough of their face for Alex to see the gleam of recognition in their eyes. It hit him like a punch to the gut. "Your own people," the figure said, their voice colder now. "There are layers within layers, Agent Carter. You're not the only one being played. There are people at the highest levels, people you thought you could trust, who are pulling the strings behind Caldwell. They're using you. Using all of you." Alex felt his chest tighten, a cold knot forming in his stomach. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His own people? Had he been betrayed by those he had trusted most? "You're lying," Alex snapped, his fists clenched. "Who is behind this? Who's really calling the shots?" The figure took a step back, their expression unreadable. "The truth is worse than you think. You've got no idea how deep this goes, Carter. If you don't get out now, if you don't walk away while you still can, they'll bury you. And not just you. Everyone." The words hit Alex like a thunderclap. The realization washed over him, and he knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Whoever was behind Caldwell Enterprises wasn't just manipulating the system. They were weaving a web of corruption so vast, it threatened to engulf everything Alex had ever known. "Why don't you just tell me who's behind all of this?" Alex demanded, his patience wearing thin. "Who's pulling the strings?" The figure paused for a long moment, and for a split second, Alex thought they might finally reveal everything. But instead, the figure's lips curled into a small, almost pitying smile. "They're watching, Carter," the figure said cryptically. "And you're already too deep. If you want the truth, you'll have to dig it up yourself. But remember, some truths are better left buried. With that, the figure disappeared back into the shadows, leaving Alex and Rachel standing in the dim light, more uncertain than ever. The figure's cryptic words echoed in Alex's mind as he and Rachel left the warehouse, their steps quick and purposeful but weighed down by the mounting uncertainty. Whoever was behind Caldwell Enterprises, and the shadowy figure who had warned him, was playing a game of unprecedented complexity. And Alex was stuck in the middle of it, caught between people he thought he could trust and those he never saw coming. But the most chilling part of it all was that he was still no closer to the truth. Rachel spoke first, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "This is bigger than just Caldwell, Alex. Whoever they're working with has everyone in their pocket. They knew we'd come here. They know what we know. And it's not just about your house anymore." Alex's mind raced, trying to make sense of the pieces that didn't quite fit. How deep did this go? "We need to find out who's behind this, Rachel," Alex muttered, his voice barely above a whisper, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "But we're running out of time. They've got people everywhere, and I've already made myself a target." Rachel's expression darkened. "What about the meeting? The whistleblower? Do we even trust them?" Alex's thoughts flickered back to the warehouse. The figure had given them a chilling warning, but the real answer lay within those cryptic statements. Who was watching him? Who was he really up against? The looming suspicion gnawed at him, making the world feel suddenly too small. Someone was always one step ahead. Just then, Alex's phone buzzed in his pocket again. He pulled it out, his heart skipping a beat as he saw the text. "I know you're looking. Stop, or you'll regret it." The message sent a chill down Alex's spine. There was no mistaking it now. This wasn't just a rogue developer trying to push him out. This was a coordinated effort, and they weren't just targeting him. They were trying to control him. Rachel glanced at him, her face pale as she read over his shoulder. "They're onto us. They know we're not backing down." Alex stared at the message for a long beat, weighing his options. The path ahead was fraught with danger. He couldn't trust the authorities, and the deeper they dug into Caldwell Enterprises, the more tangled this web became. But one thing was clear: this was more than just a demolition. It was a game of power, control, and manipulation on a scale that few could even comprehend. "We're going to need more than just information," Alex said finally, a cold determination settling into his chest. "We're going to need leverage." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Leverage? How are we going to get that? We're already exposed, Alex. Whoever this is, they're not going to let us walk away unscathed." "I know." Alex's jaw clenched as he thought of his ruined home. "But right now, they think we're just chasing ghosts. They think they can intimidate us into backing off. They're wrong." He glanced at Rachel, her stance solid, her determination mirroring his. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt like he had someone who understood the gravity of what was at stake. They weren't just fighting for answers anymore. They were fighting to stay alive. "We find out who's pulling the strings, and we expose them. We go straight to the top. If we don't, we might as well sign our own death warrants." Rachel nodded sharply. "Then we find them, whoever they are." The weight of their next move loomed over them, but Alex knew they couldn't delay. This wasn't just about keeping one step ahead anymore. It was about survival. They had no allies, no backup, and the people pulling the strings would do anything to make sure they stayed in control. As they reached the car, Alex glanced around, sensing the oppressive quiet in the night air. The shadows seemed to stretch longer now, the darkness swallowing everything whole. Whoever was watching them, whoever was hunting them, was out there. They were being stalked, and Alex could almost hear the steady beat of an unseen clock, counting down the moments until the next move. But this time, Alex wasn't going to wait to be pushed into a corner. He was going to take the fight to them. The air felt thicker as Alex and Rachel drove deeper into the city, toward a location they hoped would lead them to the answers they desperately needed. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, but every new revelation only raised more questions. The world around them was closing in, and every turn felt like it was leading them further into a web of corruption they couldn't escape. "Do you really think they'll meet us?" Rachel asked, her voice steady but laced with tension. She was gripping the passenger seat, her eyes scanning the darkness outside. The streets were eerily quiet, almost too quiet. It was like the entire city was holding its breath. "We have no choice," Alex replied, his voice clipped. "This is the last chance to get the answers we need. They're going to try to shut us down, but if we don't take this shot, we'll never know who's behind all of this." They were on their way to a small private office building on the outskirts of town. The whistleblower, the person who had given them the initial lead, had promised answers. But there was a catch. The meeting had to be in person. No cops, no witnesses. It didn't sit well with Alex, but they were running out of options. If they were going to expose the people behind Caldwell Enterprises and a corrupt HOA, they had to risk it. As they pulled into the parking lot of the office building, Alex's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Something didn't feel right. It wasn't just the unsettling quiet that had settled over the city. There was a presence, something he couldn't put his finger on. "You see that?" Alex murmured, his hand instinctively resting on his weapon. He gestured to the street corner behind them, where a black SUV had just pulled up. It was parked far enough back to seem innocent, but it was too close for comfort. Too many coincidences had happened lately, and Alex was starting to connect the dots. Rachel squinted, her gaze narrowing. It could be nothing. "Let's focus on the meeting." But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They were so close now, too close. His instincts were screaming at him, but he had no choice but to press forward. The office building loomed ahead, an old brick structure with no visible signs of life. They entered through the back door, the metal door creaking as it swung open. Inside, the air was stale, and the flickering overhead lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. Alex and Rachel moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Every corner they turned seemed to lead them deeper into the building, further away from the safety of the outside world. They reached a door at the end of the narrow hallway, and Alex motioned for Rachel to stop. "Wait here," Alex whispered, his hand on the door handle. He was acutely aware of the tension in the air, the weight of every second ticking by. His heart was racing, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He turned the handle and pushed the door open, stepping into the dimly lit room. The blinds were drawn, casting the room in a heavy shadow. At the far end of the room stood a figure, tall, cloaked in darkness, their face hidden in the shadows. Alex stepped forward, his voice low and controlled. "You said you had answers. Who are you?" The figure didn't respond immediately. Instead, they stepped into the light just enough for Alex to see a familiar face. Someone he thought he'd left behind in his past. Someone he never expected to see again. "Sergeant Matthews." Alex's voice was a whisper, disbelief seeping into his tone. The man standing before him was a former military contact, someone he had trusted once, someone who had helped him in the past. But now, seeing him here, in this place, Alex felt his stomach churn. The puzzle pieces were clicking together in a terrifying way. Matthews looked at Alex, his face unreadable, his eyes cold. "You're getting too close, Carter," he said quietly. "You don't know what you're up against." Rachel stepped forward, her expression hardening. "What's going on here, Matthews? What's your involvement with Caldwell Enterprises?" Matthews' lips curled into a thin smile, but it wasn't a friendly one. "You don't understand. Caldwell isn't the end of it. It's just a front, Carter. They're the beginning of something much bigger. The real power, it's with people who don't show their faces. They pull the strings, but you'll never get to them." Alex's blood ran cold. His mind raced. What had he just stepped into? Matthew's gaze flicked to the door behind them, and for a split second, Alex saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a warning, or perhaps a threat. "I warned you," Matthews said, his voice low, filled with regret. "Now you'll find out just how deep this goes. But don't say I didn't warn you." Before Alex could react, a loud bang echoed through the building. Gunshots, close, too close. The walls around them seemed to close in. The echo of the gunshot reverberated through the dimly lit room, sending a jolt of terror through Alex's veins. His instincts kicked into overdrive as he immediately shoved Rachel behind him, his body going rigid with adrenaline. Every muscle in his body screamed for action. They were being hunted. The door slammed open with a violent crash, and in the doorway stood two figures, tall, imposing, dressed in black tactical gear. Their faces were hidden behind masks, their weapons aimed directly at Alex and Rachel. The cold gleam of their guns was enough to send a chill through Alex's chest. He had seen men like this before, but not in situations like this. Not on his own turf. Matthews stepped back into the shadows, his cold eyes watching the unfolding scene, not a hint of fear in his expression. "Told you," he muttered, barely audible over the ringing silence. The men in the doorway didn't hesitate. One of them spoke, his voice muffled by the mask. "Hands where we can see them. You know what happens next." Alex's heart pounded in his chest. This was it. They had walked into the trap. He had been too eager to confront the truth, and now they were paying the price. But Alex wasn't about to go down without a fight. He slowly raised his hands, showing no signs of submission. His mind was already calculating every angle, every possibility. They wouldn't get away with this. Not this time. Rachel's voice was low but fierce. "You think this is over? You're wrong." The man in front of her scoffed. "You should have walked away, lady. Now you'll see just how far the rabbit hole goes." Alex locked eyes with Matthews, who was still standing in the shadows, watching like a silent spectator. Why had he led them here? The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Matthews wasn't just a bystander in this game. He was a player, a cog in the machine. And his role was about to be revealed in full. "You're making a mistake, Matthews," Alex said, his voice steady, despite the chaos unfolding around him. "I know what you're involved in. Caldwell isn't the end. I don't know who you're really working for, but I'm about to find out." Matthews' lips twitched, a cold, almost mocking smile forming at the corner of his mouth. "You still don't get it, Carter. It's not about you. It never was. You think you're the hero in this story, but you're just a pawn, just like the rest of us." The two masked men moved closer, forcing Alex and Rachel to the ground, their guns pressing into their backs. But Alex was far from done. He had been trained for situations like this. His mind raced, calculating every move. He knew what they would do next. He knew how they'd try to break him. But he wasn't going to let it happen. With a sudden, explosive movement, Alex twisted to the side, catching the nearest man off guard. His knee struck the man's chest, sending him stumbling backward. The gun clattered to the floor, and Alex grabbed it in one fluid motion, taking control of the weapon before the second assailant could react. The second man swung at him, but Alex ducked and used the momentum to disarm him in a fast, brutal motion. The gunshot rang out, but Alex wasn't sure who had fired. He was too focused on the man in front of him. Rachel had already sprung into action, taking the opportunity to knock out one of the attackers with a swift blow to the back of the head. She was moving with practiced precision, her instincts as sharp as ever. Within moments, the two assailants were on the floor, incapacitated but still breathing. Alex stood, his heart racing, his chest heaving. He was alive, but the danger wasn't over. Matthews hadn't moved. He hadn't said anything since the attack began, but Alex knew the truth now. Matthews wasn't just an ally to the enemy. He was the enemy, a player in the corrupt network that had taken over this city. But before Alex could confront him, Matthews made a decision. With a cold, emotionless expression, he turned on his heel and walked toward the door. He didn't look back, not even once. "You're on your own now, Carter," Matthews called over his shoulder, his voice thick with finality. "But you won't be the first to fall." Alex was frozen for a split second, watching Matthews disappear into the night. Then the weight of his words hit him hard. The game was bigger than Alex had ever imagined. Matthews was only a small part of the puzzle. Whoever controlled him, and Caldwell Enterprises, controlled everything. The room was silent now. Rachel turned to Alex, her voice shaky but determined. "What do we do now?" Alex glanced at the wreckage of the room, at the men who had tried to take them down. He didn't have the answers. Not yet. But one thing was clear. The truth was out there, buried beneath layers of deceit and corruption. And Alex Carter wasn't going to stop until he dug it all up. But as he stared at the darkened city streets beyond the broken window, the haunting realization settled in. The truth wasn't just hidden. It was being guarded. And whoever was watching them would stop at nothing to make sure it stayed buried. The fight was just beginning.